Eleanor Thompson stood at the kitchen window of her quaint, sun-drenched home, the morning light spilling across the countertop like liquid gold. The garden outside, alive with blooming roses and vibrant lilies, was a testament to her hard work and resilience. Yet as she sipped her coffee, the aroma swirling around her, her mind drifted back to a time when life had felt simpler, bursting with dreams and laughter. It was just a whisper above a decade ago. Eleanor could still remember the warmth of Mark's hand in hers as they strolled through the same garden, discussing their hopes for the future. "We'll have our own little empire, Ellie," Mark had laughed, his blue eyes sparkling with ambition. "A place where we can raise our kids, watch them grow, and maybe even start a business together. Just you wait." Eleanor smiled at the memory, the sound of his laughter echoing in her mind. They had been young, so full of love and promise, their hearts dancing to the rhythm of shared dreams. In those days, they envisioned a family thriving together, a legacy built on love and determination. Mark was the dreamer, the one who believed in possibilities, while Eleanor was the pragmatic one, always grounding their aspirations with reality. Together, they were a perfect balance. But that dream shattered one fateful night when a car accident took Mark's life, leaving Eleanor alone in a world that suddenly felt vast and empty. The grief had been suffocating, a heavy blanket that wrapped around her, stifling her breath. She remembered sitting on the edge of their bed, clutching the pillow that still held his scent, and crying out for a future that had been stolen from her. In the months that followed, Eleanor fought to piece her life back together. With a heart full of love and determination, she threw herself into building a business, pouring her sorrow into the work she loved. It was a bakery, a small yet inviting place that quickly became a local favorite. The scent of fresh bread and pastries wafted through the air, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Each loaf she baked was a tribute to Mark, a reminder that she could still create joy in a world that had dealt her such a cruel hand. Years passed, and Eleanor transformed her pain into resilience. She became a fixture in the community, known not just for her delectable treats, but for her unwavering spirit. Yet in the quiet moments, those still nights when shadows danced across her walls, she felt the weight of loneliness press down on her. Mark was gone, and their children, Jake and Lily, had drifted away, choosing to distance themselves after their father's death. Eleanor often wondered if they were still angry with her for moving forward, for finding a new purpose. The distance hurt, but she respected their choices, even if they felt like daggers to her heart. It was on one of those quiet evenings, as Eleanor was tidying up her bakery, that her phone rang, breaking the silence. The name on the screen brought a rush of mixed emotions. Jake. After years of silence, he was calling. With a shaky hand, she answered, her heart racing. "Hey, Mom." Jake's voice was deep, tinged with an awkwardness that made Eleanor's stomach churn. "Lily and we're coming to visit." Eleanor took a deep breath, her chest tightening. "Oh? When?" "Tomorrow," he replied, the casualness of his tone doing little to mask the tension underneath. "We thought it would be good to catch up." "Of course," she said, forcing a smile even though he couldn't see it. "I'll make your favorite dinner." "Sounds good," Jake replied, but Eleanor could sense the distance in his voice, the unspoken words that hung like a fog between them. After they hung up, Eleanor stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the call settling heavily in her chest. Tomorrow. It had been years since she had seen her children. Years filled with missed birthdays and holidays spent alone. She felt a mix of excitement and dread, those emotions often intertwined in her heart. With a sudden burst of energy, she began to prepare for their arrival. The house needed to be perfect, a warm embrace welcoming them back to the nest they had once known. She dusted the shelves, carefully arranging family photos that adorned the walls, pictures of happier times, of birthday parties, and family vacations. Each frame told a story, each smile a memory that she cherished deeply. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the room, Eleanor found herself lost in thought. She remembered the last time they had all been together, a Christmas filled with laughter that felt like a lifetime ago. She felt the sting of tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had to be strong. The next morning felt surreal as she prepared the house for her children. She baked their favorite dishes, lasagna, garlic bread, and a decadent chocolate cake. The aroma filled the air, wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. Yet as the clock ticked closer to their arrival, A knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. Would they even want to see her? Would they be angry? The doorbell rang, echoing through the house like a thunderclap. Eleanor's heart raced as she opened the door, revealing Jake and Lily standing on the porch. They looked different yet familiar. Jake was taller, his face chiseled and serious, while Lily, with her long hair framing her face, had a hint of defiance in her eyes. "Hey, Mom," Jake said, his voice lacking the warmth she had longed for. "Welcome home," Eleanor replied, forcing a smile that felt slightly strained. They stepped inside, and the air hung thick with unspoken words. Eleanor led them to the dining table, where the meal she had painstakingly prepared awaited them. As they sat down, the awkwardness clung to them, and Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Everything looks amazing," Lily said, her voice softening as she took in the spread. But Eleanor noticed the way her daughter's gaze flickered to the family photos lining the walls, a shadow passing over her features. "Thanks, sweetheart. I wanted to make this special," Eleanor replied, her heart aching at the sight of her children, so close yet so far away. As they began to eat, the conversation flowed unevenly, each attempt at small talk feeling like a fragile bridge over a chasm of emotions. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced by an uneasy silence, punctuated only by the clinking of silverware against plates. Eleanor's heart sank as she sensed a wall between them, a barrier constructed from years of absence and resentment. She wanted to reach out, to tear down that wall, but the words remained lodged in her throat, heavy with fear and uncertainty. "Mom, how's the bakery doing?" Jake finally asked, breaking the silence. "It's doing well," Eleanor replied, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside her. "I've been working hard. It's been my passion." "Yeah, I can see that," he nodded. But there was an edge in his tone that made her skin prickle. Lily's gaze flicked between her brother and their mother, and Eleanor could feel the tension crackling in the air. What had once been a home filled with love and laughter now felt like a battlefield, each word a potential landmine waiting to explode. As dinner progressed, Eleanor's heart ached with the realization that the dreams she had once shared with her children were at risk of being buried under the weight of their unspoken grievances. She had built a life for herself, but what if they were more interested in what she had created than in reconciling their fractured relationship? With every bite they took, the distance between them only seemed to grow. Eleanor felt the familiar pang of loneliness creeping back in, a bitter reminder of the years spent apart. Would they ever truly come home? Eleanor stood in the center of her living room, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The sunlight streamed through the large bay window, casting a golden glow over the meticulously arranged furniture, a testament to her hard work and dedication. Yet despite the warmth of the afternoon light, a chill crept into her bones as she prepared for the arrival of her children, Jake and Lily. It had been years since she had seen them, and the thought of their impending visit filled her with a mix of hope and dread. She glanced around the room, taking in the family photographs that lined the walls. In each frame she could see the faces of her children, captured in moments of joy and laughter. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the long years of silence and estrangement. Eleanor had poured her heart into building a life after Mark's death, but the reality of their absence weighed heavily on her. "Breathe, Eleanor," she whispered to herself, shaking her head as she adjusted the flowers in the vase on the coffee table. They were fresh and vibrant, a reflection of her desire to create an inviting atmosphere. She hoped that the beauty of her home might bridge the chasm that had formed between them. As she moved to the kitchen, she busied herself with preparing dinner. The rich aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, mingling with the subtle notes of rosemary and garlic. Cooking had always been a comforting ritual for Eleanor, a way to express her love. She recalled the countless family dinners they had shared, laughter echoing off the walls. But now, as she set the table for three, she felt an emptiness that seemed insurmountable. The doorbell rang, and Eleanor's heart raced. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and took a deep breath, trying to steady herself before opening the door. When she finally did, she was met with the sight of Jake and Lily standing on her doorstep, their expressions a mixture of uncertainty and resolve. "Mom," Jake said, his voice low, as he stepped forward to embrace her. Eleanor felt the familiar warmth of his body, but was struck by the tension that lingered in the air. Lily followed suit, her embrace more hesitant, as if unsure of how to navigate the emotional landscape between them. "Welcome back," Eleanor said, forcing a smile as she stepped aside to let them in. "It's been too long." The three of them stood awkwardly in the foyer, the silence punctuated only by the distant ticking of the clock. Eleanor led them into the living room, where they settled onto the plush sofa. She offered them drinks, trying to ease the tension that hung between them. "Wine?" she suggested, pouring 2 glasses for her children. They exchanged glances before accepting, and Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that they were sizing her up, assessing the woman who had once been their mother. "So how was the drive?" she asked, attempting to spark conversation. "It was fine," Jake replied, his tone clipped. "Traffic was terrible." "Yeah, we got stuck behind a truck for ages," Lily added, her eyes wandering around the room, taking in the changes Eleanor had made over the years. "You've done a lot with the place." Eleanor nodded, feeling a flicker of pride. "I've tried to make it a home again." She hesitated, sensing the unspoken grievances swirling in the air. "I hope you both like it." "It's nice," Jake said, his voice lacking enthusiasm. Eleanor noted the way he avoided eye contact, a clear sign that their reunion was not going to be as simple as she had hoped. As they settled into dinner, Eleanor tried to maintain a light atmosphere, recounting stories from her life since they had last spoken. She spoke of her business, the challenges she had faced, and the triumphs that had come with hard work. Yet each time she mentioned her accomplishments, she caught the subtle shifts in her children's expressions. The tightening of Jake's jaw, the way Lily's fingers drummed nervously against the table. "Sounds like you've really built something for yourself," Jake said, his tone laced with skepticism. "Must have taken a lot of time and effort." "It did," Eleanor replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I did it for us, for the family. I wanted to create a future that we could all be proud of." Lily's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what about us, Mom? We've been gone for years. You never thought to bring us into any of this?" Eleanor's heart sank at the accusation, the weight of their shared history pressing down on her. She stammered, searching for the right words. "I thought you needed space. I didn't want to push you away even further."
Space? Jake scoffed, his voice rising. You mean you didn't want us to interfere with your plans? I get it. You've built this life, and now you want to keep us at arm's length. Jake, that's not fair, Eleanor said, her voice firming. I've worked hard for what I have. I thought you'd be happy for me. Happy? Jake shot back, shaking his head. You've got it all wrong. We're not here to celebrate your success. We're here to talk about what's ours. The atmosphere turned electric, the tension palpable as Eleanor stared at her son, disbelief washing over her. What do you mean, what's ours? Lily leaned forward, her expression shifting from uncertainty to determination. We're here to discuss the inheritance, Mom. You need to understand that we have a stake in everything. You can't just keep it all to yourself. Eleanor felt her chest tighten, the betrayal cutting deeper than she could have imagined. You think I built this business to line my pockets? I did it for our family, for you too. And now you're just going to keep it all while we struggle? Jake's voice dripped with resentment. That's not how this works. Eleanor's heart raced, a whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had poured her soul into her work, and now it felt like everything she had fought for was being reduced to mere numbers on a balance sheet. I didn't ask for this, Jake. I didn't choose to be alone. I lost your father, and then I lost you both too. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Eleanor could see the flicker of recognition in her children's eyes, a brief glimpse of the pain she had endured. But it was quickly overshadowed by the resolve that had brought them home. Mom, we're not trying to hurt you, Lily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But we need to talk about what's fair. You can't just ignore us because you're angry. Eleanor took a deep breath, steadying herself. I'm not angry. I'm heartbroken. I thought you two would come back to reconnect, not to claim what you think is rightfully yours. The tension lingered, an invisible barrier that separated them even as they sat together at the table. Eleanor could feel the gulf widening, their shared history now marred by misunderstandings and unspoken resentments. Dinner was lovely, Mom, Jake said finally, his tone softer but still tinged with an edge of bitterness. But this isn't over. We need to figure things out. Figure things out? Eleanor echoed, her voice trembling. You think this is just about money? Isn't it? Jake replied, his gaze unwavering. Eleanor looked at her children, the realization sinking in that the bonds of love and trust she had once cherished were now frayed and fragile. If you think this is just about money, then you don't know me at all. With that, she stood up, her heart heavy with the weight of their words. She needed space just as they had once sought it. As she walked away from the table, she knew that the battle for her legacy had only just begun, and the fight would be waged not just for her business, but for the very soul of her family. Eleanor stood in the dim light of her living room, the shadows of the evening creeping in through the large windows. She could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to slice through. The remnants of dinner lingered on the table, half-eaten dishes, glasses of wine, and the uneaten pie that she had baked with such care. The warm smell of cinnamon and apples was a stark contrast to the chill that had settled over the room after Jake and Lily's arrival. Jake, who had always been the more assertive of the two, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, a scowl etched across his face. Lily sat on the edge of her chair, her fingers nervously twisting a napkin in her lap. Eleanor's heart ached at the sight of her children, so familiar yet so distant. It had been years since they had shared the same space, and the distance between them felt insurmountable. I just don't understand why you felt the need to keep all the family heirlooms for yourself, Jake began, his tone accusatory. His voice broke the silence, heavy with resentment. Those items should belong to us, Mom. You're hoarding our legacy. Eleanor felt a surge of indignation at his words. Jake, those heirlooms were left to me after your father passed. They are part of our family history, and I thought you'd understand that. Understand? Jake scoffed, his voice rising. You think it's fair for you to sit on everything while we're left out? You never even discussed it with us. Lily finally looked up, her eyes gleaming with unshed tears, but her expression was one of anger mixed with betrayal. Mom, we've been trying to reach out to you for years, and all you do is build this empire without us. We're your children. We should be part of your life and your decisions. Eleanor's chest tightened. Her children had always been her world, and it pained her to hear them voice such accusations. I built this business for us, for our future. You both chose to distance yourselves from me. I reached out countless times, but you never responded. I thought you wanted nothing to do with this life. The room fell silent, the only sound being the quiet ticking of the clock on the wall. Jake shifted uncomfortably, his bravado faltering slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. That's the thing, Mom. You didn't think. You just assumed we'd be grateful for whatever you decided to give us. Eleanor shook her head, trying to maintain her composure. You think I've done this out of selfishness? Everything I've done has been to secure a future for you both. I worked hard to rebuild my life after your father's death, to create something that would honor his memory. Honor his memory or your own? Jake retorted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. What about us? We were left with nothing but memories of a mother who chose to go it alone. Lily's voice broke through the tension, softer but laced with bitterness. You were always so focused on your career, Mom. What about the times we needed you? The times we reached out? You can't just pretend everything was fine because you were successful. Eleanor felt her heart shatter at their words. The years of absence, the moments she had missed, the loneliness that had consumed her. She had poured everything into her business, believing it would one day bring them together again. I thought if I could build something meaningful, you'd be proud of me. I wanted to create a legacy that we could all share. But it's your legacy, Mom, Jake said, his tone softening ever so slightly. You've made it all about you. We want to be part of it, but you've shut us out. You have no idea how it feels to be left in the dark. Eleanor turned away, her breath hitching in her throat. She needed a moment to gather her thoughts, to shield herself from the onslaught of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She walked toward her study, the place where she had spent countless hours drafting business plans, poring over figures and dreaming of a future that now felt more like a distant fantasy. Inside the study, she closed the door, leaning against it for support. Her eyes fell on the desk, where a letter from Mark lay, unopened and dust-covered. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the familiar handwriting, the sight of it igniting a flicker of warmth in her heart. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. The words were a balm to her aching soul, reminding her of the dreams they had shared, the plans for a family business, the hopes for a bright future. She could almost hear his voice as she read aloud the lines he had penned years ago. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I want you to know how much I believe in you. You have always had the strength to overcome anything that life throws your way. Remember, our love is the foundation of everything we build together. No matter what happens, never let go of that love. It will guide you through the darkest of times. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she recalled the man who had stood by her side through thick and thin, who had encouraged her to follow her dreams even when the world seemed determined to break her. He would never have wanted this, to see their children tearing each other apart over material possessions. Eleanor took a deep breath, the weight of her grief mingling with the anger she felt toward her children. She could not allow their bitterness to destroy everything she had worked for. She had to remind them of the love that had once bound their family together, the love that had inspired her all these years. Mom? Jake's voice called from the other side of the door, tinged with uncertainty. Eleanor quickly wiped her tears and composed herself. I'll be out in a moment, she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. As she opened the door, she found Jake and Lily waiting, their expressions a mix of concern and defiance. The air was heavy with unresolved tension, and she knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But Eleanor was determined. She would confront this rift. She would fight for her family, for the legacy that was not just her own, but belonged to all of them. Let's talk, she said, her voice firm. I want to set the record straight about our family and the future. Jake and Lily exchanged glances, uncertainty etched across their faces. But Eleanor stood tall, ready to face whatever came next. She would not let her children's anger define their relationship. She owed it to Mark, to their shared dreams, and most importantly, to herself. Eleanor stood in her living room, the bright afternoon sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains, casting soft patterns on the walls. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the family meeting she had arranged. The air was thick with anticipation and unspoken tensions, a palpable reminder of the fractured relationship she had with her children. Jake and Lily were in the kitchen, their hushed voices rising and falling like the tide, and she could just catch snippets of their conversation. She thinks she can just teach us? Jake's voice was laced with sarcasm, a tone that had become all too familiar. What does she know about our lives? Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the sting of his words. She had worked tirelessly to build her business from the ground up, pouring everything she had into it. The thought of sharing her knowledge and experience had been a genuine offer, one made in the hope of reconnecting with her children. Instead, it felt like she was offering a piece of herself to two strangers who were more interested in what they could take from her than what they could build with her. She stepped into the kitchen, her resolve firm. Jake, Lily, it's time to sit down. We need to talk. The siblings exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of annoyance and reluctance. But they complied, taking their seats at the dining table. Eleanor remained standing, her heart pounding in her chest. She had envisioned this moment as a step toward healing, but now it felt like she was walking into a storm. First of all, I want to thank you both for coming, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. I know we've had our differences, but I believe we can work through this together. Together? Lily scoffed, crossing her arms. You mean you want to keep everything for yourself while we sit here and pretend everything's fine? Eleanor felt a pang of disappointment. That's not what I meant at all. I want to share my business with you, to show you what I've built. I thought what? Jake interrupted, leaning back in his chair, his posture defensive. That we would just be grateful for whatever scraps you decide to throw our way? No, Jake, that's not it, Eleanor insisted, her frustration bubbling to the surface. I'm offering you both a chance to learn. I've spent years building this company, and it took a lot of sacrifice and hard work. I want to teach you how to succeed, to create something of your own. Lily shook her head, her expression hardening. You think this is about learning? This is about our inheritance, Mom. You know that. Eleanor's heart sank at the harsh truth in Lily's words. It felt as though the very foundation of her hopes for reconciliation was crumbling beneath her. I know you're concerned about inheritance, but my intention is not to keep anything from you. I want to ensure that you understand what it means to truly work for something. Right, Jake scoffed again, shaking his head. You've made your money, and now you just want us to be your little apprentices while you keep everything to yourself. It's always been about you, hasn't it? Stop, Eleanor said, her voice rising unexpectedly. You don't understand the sacrifices I made to get here. I lost your father, and I lost you too as well. I devoted my life to building this in his memory, and now I feel like I'm losing you all over again. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Jake's expression softened for a brief moment, as if he were contemplating her words. But then he hardened again, his resolve returning. You're right. You lost us. But that's because you chose to prioritize this business over your family. You think that just because you worked hard, we owe you gratitude? Eleanor felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. I never meant to prioritize my work over you. I thought you'd be proud of what I built. I wanted to create a legacy for our family, not just for myself. Legacy, Lily echoed, her voice dripping with bitterness. You mean the legacy of a woman who shut us out while she played CEO? You didn't even consider our feelings when you made decisions. Do you really think I wanted to cut you out? Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. I was trying to protect you. I didn't want to burden you with the pressures of running the business while you were still finding your own paths. Protect us? Jake laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the tense atmosphere. You call this protection? You're hoarding everything while we're left with nothing. That's not protection. That's selfishness. Eleanor felt her heart crack under the weight of their accusations. You're not even interested in understanding my side of this. You're only focused on what you think you deserve. Because that's all you've left us with, Mom, Lily shot back, her eyes flashing with anger. You've built this world around yourself and now expect us to just accept it. I'm offering you a place in it, Eleanor exclaimed, her voice rising in desperation. I'm trying to bring you back into my life, but you don't want to see it. You only want what's in my bank account. The conversation devolved into a cacophony of raised voices, accusations flinging back and forth like arrows. Each word cut deeper than the last, and Eleanor could feel the walls closing in around her. She had hoped this meeting would be a turning point, a chance to mend what had been broken, but instead it felt like a war zone. As the argument continued, Eleanor's heart ached with the realization that her children were not the same people she had once known. The bond they shared had eroded, replaced by bitterness and resentment. She felt like a stranger in her own home, grappling with the loss of the family she had loved so deeply. Finally, overwhelmed by the weight of their anger and her own sadness, Eleanor stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If this is how you see me, then maybe it's better if we take a step back. Step back? Jake echoed incredulously, his disbelief palpable. You're just going to walk away? Typical. I need time to think, she replied, her voice trembling. I thought I could bridge the gap between us, but it seems like we're too far apart. As she turned to leave the room, she felt the weight of their stares on her back, piercing and accusatory. She walked toward her study, her sanctuary, where she could escape the harsh reality of their confrontation. The door clicked shut behind her, a barrier between her and the chaos that had erupted moments ago. Inside the study, Eleanor leaned against the door, her heart racing. She had hoped for understanding, for reconciliation, but instead, she felt more alone than ever. The walls of her carefully constructed life seemed to be closing in, and she wondered if she would ever be able to reconcile the love she had for her children with the betrayal she felt in her heart. As she paced the room, Eleanor's eyes fell on a letter tucked away on her desk, one she had received from Mark years ago. She picked it up, the familiar handwriting stirring memories of love and laughter. It was a reminder of the dreams they once shared, of the life they had built together before tragedy struck. In that moment, she realized that she had fought too hard to build her life, to let it be torn apart by greed and resentment. She would not allow her children's anger to dictate her worth or define her legacy. Eleanor took a deep breath, determination coursing through her veins. She would find a way to protect what she had built, even if it meant standing alone. Eleanor Thompson sat at her polished oak desk, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting a gentle light over the stacks of documents that lay before her. She had poured her heart and soul into her business, each piece of paper a testament to her unwavering dedication and resilience. Yet as she sifted through the reports, her mind drifted to the recent visit from Jake and Lily. The tension that hung in the air during their reunion was like a heavy fog, suffocating and inescapable. Despite her efforts to focus, Eleanor found herself haunted by their words. The snide remarks, the veiled accusations, and the unmistakable undercurrent of resentment had left deep cuts in her heart. It was as if her children had transformed into strangers overnight, their love replaced by greed and entitlement. She shook her head, trying to dispel the thoughts that clouded her mind. "Focus, Eleanor," she whispered to herself, but it was a futile effort. In the days that followed their arrival, Eleanor immersed herself in her work. She believed that by throwing herself into her business, she could drown out the emotional turmoil that threatened to consume her. The rhythmic clacking of her keyboard became both a refuge and a prison, a place where she could exert control over her world while the chaos swirled outside her office door. Yet the peace she sought was elusive. Jake and Lily's presence loomed large in her home, their jibes and passive-aggressive comments echoing through the walls. She often caught snippets of their conversations as they congregated in the living room or kitchen, their voices dripping with disdain. "You know, it must be exhausting to keep up the facade of success," Jake would say, his tone laced with sarcasm. Lily would chime in, her laughter sharp and cutting. "I wonder how long it will last before everything comes crashing down." Eleanor clenched her jaw, the frustration boiling beneath her skin. How had it come to this? How had her children, whom she had nurtured and loved unconditionally, turned into adversaries? The very thought made her stomach churn. She had sacrificed so much for their happiness, pouring every ounce of her being into raising them after Mark's tragic passing. To think they now saw her as an obstacle rather than a mother filled her with a profound sense of loss. One particularly quiet night, as the house settled into an uneasy silence, Eleanor found herself unable to sleep. She wandered down the dimly lit hallway, the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the windows. She paused outside Jake's room, the door slightly ajar, and her instincts urged her to listen. She pressed her ear against the cool wood, her heart racing as she strained to hear their conversation. "She thinks she can just keep everything for herself." Jake's voice was low, simmering with anger. "But we deserve a piece of what she has. We deserve to be included in the decisions." "Exactly," Lily replied, her voice a whisper but filled with conviction. "We've been left out for too long. It's time we take back what's ours." Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat, a cold wave of realization washing over her. They were plotting against her, discussing plans to undermine the very foundation she had built with her blood, sweat, and tears. The betrayal stung deeper than any wound she had ever known. Her children, her own flesh and blood, were conspiring to strip her of everything she had worked for. A mixture of anger and heartbreak surged within her, igniting a fierce determination she had thought long extinguished. She straightened her back, her mind racing with thoughts of how to confront them. She would not let them take away her legacy without a fight. She had faced adversity before, and she would face it again. This time, it would be for her own survival. The following morning, Eleanor woke with a renewed sense of purpose. She dressed carefully, her attire a reflection of her resolve. A tailored blazer and a crisp blouse that made her feel powerful. She glanced in the mirror, taking in the woman staring back at her. "You are stronger than they think," she whispered, her reflection offering a silent nod of encouragement. As she descended the staircase, Eleanor could hear Jake and Lily in the kitchen, their voices rising and falling like a discordant symphony. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest, and stepped into the room. The moment they saw her, the laughter faded, replaced by an awkward silence that was palpable. "Good morning," Eleanor said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We need to talk." Jake leaned against the countertop, crossing his arms defensively. "About what?" More of your business lectures? No, about you two, she replied, her gaze firm. I overheard your conversation last night. Lily's expression shifted from surprise to indignation. You were eavesdropping? That's a new low, Mom. It's not eavesdropping if you're plotting against me in my own home. Eleanor shot back, her voice rising. I can't believe you would even think of undermining me, of trying to take what I've built. I deserve your respect, not your disdain. Jake scoffed, his arms tightening around himself. Respect? You think we owe you that? You've kept us in the dark about everything, and now you want us to just accept your word? What about our inheritance? Eleanor felt her heart sink at the mention of inheritance, the very word dripping with entitlement. This isn't about inheritance, Jake. It's about what I've worked for. I've built this business from nothing. I didn't have a safety net, and I faced countless challenges alone. I did it for you both, so you would have a future. But we want a future too, Mom, Lily interjected, her voice laced with frustration. You can't just hold everything over our heads and expect us to be grateful. We want to be included in this life you've created. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. Included? You think this is about inclusion? You're treating me like an enemy instead of a mother, and it breaks my heart. The room fell silent, the tension so thick it felt suffocating. Eleanor's heart raced. She could see the anger and resentment simmering in their eyes, but beneath that, she caught a flicker of something else. Fear. Fear of losing the only mother they had known. Fear of the future, and perhaps a hint of regret. You need to understand something, she continued, her voice softer but unwavering. I won't let you destroy what I've built. If you want to be a part of this, you need to come to me with respect and honesty, not with schemes and demands. Jake opened his mouth to retort, but Eleanor held up a hand, stopping him. You may not realize it, but you're pushing me further away. I'm still your mother, and I will fight for what is mine, just as I fought for you when you were children. As she turned to leave, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start, a declaration of her strength. She wouldn't let her children tear down the life she had fought so hard to create. She had faced darkness before, and she would face it again. This time, she would do it head-on, ready to protect her legacy at all costs. Eleanor stood in the dim light of her study, the silence of the room suffocating her. The shadows cast by the fading evening sun danced against the walls, echoing the turmoil in her heart. She had overheard Jake and Lily's hushed conversation just moments before, their words sharp and menacing, slicing through the fragile veneer of family ties. Now she felt a surge of adrenaline as she prepared to confront them, the weight of her resolve pressing heavily upon her chest. As she stepped into the living room, a storm of emotions brewed within her. Jake and Lily were seated on the large plush couch, their expressions unreadable. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, and Eleanor could sense that they were both bracing for impact. Eleanor, Jake began, his tone deceptively calm. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, his brow furrowed. We need to talk about this situation. Eleanor straightened her posture, the fire igniting within her. You mean the situation you and Lily have concocted behind my back? She shot back, her voice steadier than she felt. I know what you've been planning, Jake. Lily's eyes widened in surprise, and she exchanged a quick glance with her brother. What do you mean? She asked, feigning innocence. Cut the act, Lily. I heard you both discussing how to undermine my business. You think I built everything from nothing just to hand it over to you? Eleanor's voice trembled with a mix of anger and hurt. Jake scoffed, folding his arms across his chest. It's not about handing anything over, Mom. It's about fairness. You've kept us in the dark for too long. Do you really think you can keep everything to yourself without consequences? Fairness? Eleanor echoed, incredulity lacing her words. Fairness would have been reaching out to me, not plotting behind my back. You both abandoned me when I needed you the most, and now you come back, expecting me to just give you everything? Things change, Eleanor, Jake said, his voice rising. You're not the same person you were when we left. You've become this businesswoman who cares more about profits than her own children. Eleanor felt the heat of betrayal wash over her. Cares more about profits? I've sacrificed everything to build this life. Everything. Her voice broke slightly, revealing the depth of her anguish. And I did it alone while you were off living your lives without a thought for me. As silence enveloped the room, Jake's expression hardened. You think you're the only one who suffered? We had to deal with your absence, your refusal to share your life with us. We wanted a mother, not a CEO. The words stung. Eleanor took a deep breath, fighting back the tears threatening to spill. I was trying to survive, Jake. I lost your father. I lost my partner. I had to create something from the ashes of my grief. You couldn't understand that then, and it seems you still don't. I understand more than you think, Jake said, his voice low but steady. And I have proof of your dealings, Eleanor. I have documents, emails, evidence that could ruin you. All I want is what's fair. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. But before Jake could respond, Lily interjected, her tone surprisingly defensive. Wait. Just wait a second, Jake. I don't think this is the way to go about things. She looked at Eleanor, her expression softening. Mom, Lily, Jake interrupted, frustration evident in his voice. You can't be serious. You're siding with her? I'm not siding with anyone, Lily shot back, her voice rising. I just think there has to be a better way to handle this. Mom has worked so hard, and we can't just tear her down like this. Eleanor blinked in disbelief, feeling a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. Lily, are you saying you don't agree with him? That you don't want to undermine me? Lily hesitated, glancing at Jake before nodding slowly. I've been trying to find a way to talk to you, Mom. I didn't know how to approach you about everything. I felt left out, but I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to protect you. Protect me? Jake scoffed, incredulous. You think siding with her will protect her? She's the one who pushed us away. No, Jake, you're missing the point, Lily retorted, her voice steady now. I've been working on my own plan, something to help Mom without tearing her down. I don't want to see her legacy destroyed. I want to build something with her, not against her. Eleanor's heart raced as she processed Lily's words. You've been working on a plan? She asked, her voice trembling. What do you mean? I've been researching ways to expand the business, to make it more profitable without sacrificing what you've built. I wanted to present it to you, but I didn't know how you would react, especially with Jake's hostility. Jake looked between them, his expression shifting from anger to confusion. You were going to do this without telling me? He asked incredulously. I didn't want to get caught in your crossfire, Lily said, her voice firm. I wanted to find a way to show Mom that we could work together, that we could be a family again, without tearing her down. Eleanor felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over her. So you've been trying to protect me all this time? She asked, her voice softening. Yes, Lily replied, her eyes earnest. I thought if I could show you how much I admire what you've built, maybe we could find a way to move forward together. Eleanor's heart swelled with a strange mix of gratitude and sorrow. But Jake, what about you? Why do you want to destroy what I've worked so hard for? Because I feel like I'm losing you both, Jake admitted, his voice quieter now, tinged with vulnerability. I thought if I could expose what I see as unfairness, maybe it would force you to see me again. But I didn't realize how much it would hurt you. Eleanor took a deep breath, her emotions swirling within her. She looked at her children, the two pieces of her heart that had been torn apart by resentment and misunderstanding. I never wanted to push you away, but you both need to understand that my success does not erase my love for you. I want to find a way to share what I have, but it has to be built on trust. Silence hung in the air as the three of them stood there, the weight of their past settling heavily on their shoulders. Eleanor felt the fragility of their relationship, knowing that the battle for her legacy was far from over, and the wounds of betrayal and mistrust would take time to heal. Can we start over? Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with hope and uncertainty. Jake looked at Lily, then back at their mother, a flicker of understanding passing between them. I don't know, he admitted, his voice heavy with regret, but I want to try. Lily reached out, placing her hand on Eleanor's arm. We can figure this out together. No more secrets. As Eleanor looked at her children, her heart ached with a mix of fear and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, But for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of possibility. The battle for her legacy was far from over, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could navigate these treacherous waters together.